And here we are once again. We took a break last week, but now we will be together now. I'll be around for several weeks, and so we'll continue on. We've completed our first chapter in the Gospel of John, and we intentionally spent quite a bit of time in there because it really builds. Chapter 1 builds a basis for the entire book. And last time we were together, 2 weeks ago, we launched out into chapter 2, which begins verses 1 through 12, and it's the story of the wedding at Cana. And so we introduced the story last time, we talked about it, and before I make many comments here, let's go ahead and if someone could read John chapter 2, 1 through 12, the story, and then we'll have some comments on that. So if somebody could read that.
On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does that have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." So they filled them up to the brim, and he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the head waiter." So they took it to him. When the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who drawn the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then he serves the poorer wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This beginning of his signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there a few days.
All right, thanks, Everett. All righty. So this is review from last time. We're just going to kind of walk our way through the story. The wedding itself. And this is the inaugural event. This is only in the Gospel of John. And this is what the writer, John the writer, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, put in directly after the prologue. This is the first story. So the inaugural event. Jesus and his disciples and his mother are attending a wedding close by to their home. I think we said last time 4 to 6 miles from Nazareth in this little village of Cana. During the reception, the wine runs out. That's the problem in the story. Jesus' mother informs Jesus that the wine has run out. Now, okay, and then, of course, then what follows is that really interesting response by Jesus. Almost like, "Mom, back off." That's how I read it. But, there's been a lot of written on this, and we talked some about it last. Jesus responds to her. And then his mother directs the wedding staff to listen to Jesus. Okay? Then, after that, Jesus directs the staff. And he says to them, fill the water pots. These 6 purification vessels that were very common in that day. They held the clean water for the continual purification process of the Jewish rituals. And now you understand, this is not physical cleansing. This is spiritual purification. that is in view here. Jesus directs the staff to fill these water pots with water, and after there's no waving of the wand or anything. As soon as it hits the pot, as soon as the water hits the pot, how is it transformed? I don't know, but the pouring in of the water then automatically just instantly converted into wine. And that wine was then taken to the head waiter, the master of hosts, and overseeing the entire wedding. That's where we left it last time, is that we read the head waiter's interpretation of the event. Now we want to pay attention to this. And he said, I've been to a lot of weddings. And whether it's common or not that the wine runs out, who knows? He didn't address that. He says, I've been to a lot of weddings, and the typical thing, due to the economics of a wedding, is that the best is served first. And once people get tipsy, they can't discern. They don't have the discernment, because after a while, wine all tastes the same. But you, bridegroom, he pulls the bridegroom away from the ceremony. He is so taken back by this event. He pulls the bridegroom away from the bride for a moment and gives him this interpretation. He says, but you are different. You serve the best for last. Oh, I think there's a lot of meaning in there. The best is last. Okay, so that's where we left. That's what the line represents. That's where we left last time. So now we want to continue on with new, and we come to verses 11 through 12, which is John's summary statement. Okay, the story ends in verse 10, but then the interpreter of the story, John, the writer, then fills in, and that gives us a key to how to understand this. So his summary statement is number one is the beginning of his signs with location. So what we have to pay attention to is there's more to come. This is the beginning of something that is going to happen. And I think maybe some of you aware there are 7 signs in John's gospel, but this is the first. And it also points to there's a larger meaning here. There's something more than just the story. There's a story behind the story. And so he gives the location, which is near home, near Jesus' home. And he says he manifested his glory. So there was a moment when the window opened, and at the inaugural event, the audience gets a glimpse of who Jesus is and what he represents. The word glory, in my mind, whenever I read the term glory, both in the beginning in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, is the presence of God. The idea of glory has the idea of weight, the weightiness of God, the very presence of God. And so he manifests his presence to the people. And just like a window opens for just a short period of time, and there's a message in that window that we're supposed to get, and then the window closes. See, so he manifested his glory. He showed us something greater. And then the third, his disciples believed. Now, as I said prior, one of the key words in John's gospel is the idea of receive. Receive and believe are synonymous. We're going to see Jesus interacting with human beings and situations and all kinds of occasions for the remaining of the gospel leading up to the Passion. And we're going to see the reception of Jesus Christ. And so, in this case, the disciples believed. Remember, they're on a journey. They're on a journey. So, the last thing is now the group, for whatever reason John writes this, he gives a little more detail, color, on where they go next. They're in Cana near Nazareth, and they move from there to the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, a little settlement right on the north shore called Capernaum, and there they hang out, the whole group. Now, what were they doing those 4 days? Were they processing this whole thing? Probably. But it includes the entire group, which is his mother joined them, his brothers, and his disciples. So they took this little trip, and they spent time together for a few days. Okay, that's where it ends.
Mike, I think, if I remember right, at Capernaum was where Peter's house was.
Yeah, I think so. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember standing there and watching it. Just
Yeah.
okay. It's just like a footers,
Yeah.
rock footers. That's Peter's house. Okay, that's cool. Let's move on. Everybody on the bus.
So his house and stayed there for a while. It kind of makes sense.
You what?
It would kind of make sense. if
It
they
would,
stayed at
yeah.
Peter's house
Yeah,
for a little while.
yeah. That's probably correct. Maybe they stayed at Peter's house. That could be. So, what is this all about? What is the story behind the story? It's first in a series. John, unique to the Gospel of John. So these kinds of questions raise questions of what this is all about. So you're going to get it from my head, what I think. And you can judge. But don't be too hard on me, okay? So what is this all about? I think it's the human condition. I think this is all about the human condition. And let me explain. The presence of the purification pots points to something larger. That's a very important detail from my perspective in the story. Where do you see a wedding with purification pots? A wedding represents one of the most celebrative events in the human experience. I think maybe greater, Alan, is a 50-year wedding anniversary that's coming up. Maybe I would put that above a wedding myself. That's amazing. Only 6%, as you said, married couples make it to 50 years, and that's a marvelous thing to celebrate. And it'll be a wonderful day. August 19th, 25th. Thank you. It leaked out. But I have the invitation right here. August 25th. Mark your calendars. But so there's this wonderful setting, but yet there is lack within the setting. And that is the human experience. We go into and we celebrate, but yet there's always something missing. Very seldom do we have times when everything is right. Now, sometimes we get a glimpse of that. But this is the cast of the story. There's this wonderful celebration, but there is lack in the midst. And there is also in the story these purification pots that reminds us of something else, and that reminds us of guilt. Because had enough, hey Carl?
Yeah.
Have a good day. Hope it goes well at the dock.
Yeah.
See ya. So this is the human condition that this setting, these purification pots. The primal idea here, in my mind, is guilt points to purification, the pots, and the purification then leads us to clean. And then, once again, to complete the circle, clean eventually breaks down to guilt. And this in from my mind, this is the human condition that we are in. We're in a constant state. We tend to revert back to a state of guilt. And I would say this is universal. This is true to all human beings. We tend to go to to the feeling of guilt. And then we take care of that guilt through a purification process of some sort. And of course, we confess our sins and so forth. And then we move to a state of cleanliness. And then eventually we just remove back to a state of guilt. We are constantly reverting back to a state of guilt. And this is the whole reason Jesus has come, is this common human condition. Jesus enters right into the middle of this universal human condition. Jesus, right at the first story in the Gospel of John, Jesus hits the nail on the head, moves right into the core of the human condition. Jesus is now putting himself into the middle of that through a glimpse where he revealed his glory. And as a result, this universal human condition collapses into him. He is taking this on. He is the one. He is the one that is addressing this, and I'll show you how in just a moment. And I like that word collapses. Everything collapses into Jesus Christ. Everything. All problems. All. So, through his inaugural ministry event, there are two things I want you to see. Jesus demonstrates, first of all, that this universal human condition is now moving through him. It's now changing state, moving from a state of constant lack depicted in the story of this setting of celebration, but yet something's wrong. That's the human condition. Moving from a state of constant lack to a state of maximum provision. It's not only wine, it is the best wine. You see that? From lack to maximum provision. That is the ministry of Jesus, and he demonstrates that in this first miracle. Secondly, he transforms the given purification process, the given that everyone at that time was familiar with. You walk into the living room and there's the pots. I mean, they would know that very clearly. Well, this is what this is about, as a reminder of the constant need for purification. Jesus transforms this purification process by converting the ordinary into the extraordinary. The water into wine. So, given that, there are two major points to this story. And I built a table time around this. There is, first of all, from lack to abundance, maximum provision. We enter into life. We are constantly in a state of lack in our heads. But Jesus has brought abundance. Secondly, he takes the ordinary, and through Jesus Christ, he transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, the wine. Okay, can you see the two? From lack to abundance, from ordinary to extraordinary. This way. You know, here is the X, here is the Y. So, as we plot it, I'm going to leave this till next time because I would really like for us to grapple with this, and so I'm going to wait to do this for next time. But what we're going to talk about at our tables next time, we're out of time now, is where would you plot yourself in regard to your current perspective on matters of life and things. That is a mouthful. And it'll take some time to think about it, so you've got a week to think about it. And I'd like for us to look at this as men. And there is our natural state where Jesus enters the story. There is lack and there is ordinary. And through the transformational process of the story, Jesus entering into the story, we move to a state of abundance and extraordinary. And that, in a sense, is the transformational process that you and I go through. But it's not a linear kind of, we don't just automatically go from here to here. We bump around in this. And it's common to be in various boxes, the different boxes at different times in our life. But I'd like for us to grapple with this idea that if you could freeze your current state in mind, are you coming, is your perspective, where is your perspective? Not one or the other, but how would you plot yourself in this, in this four boxes? Are you coming from a state where I always need more? It's never enough. And is my life, or do I have plenty? Am I satisfied? See, there's where it starts to get down to home. In Christ, our walk, His presence with us every day, how has that informed my thinking? Am I coming out of a state of lack? Or do I see life as full and abundant and I have enough? Secondly, on the why, is my life pretty much an ordinary life? Or do I have the lenses of viewing things? Do I see water being turned into wine? Dick's story this morning, he says, I viewed it as a miracle. Absolutely. That was a great story. That's an ordinary into an extraordinary. That is something that sizzles with something outside of our realm of experience. And so what lenses do I have? And that's what we're going to look at next week. And I'd like for us to talk about that at our tables. And I'll just give you one precursor here, is that you won't be allowed to plot yourself on the line, the dotted lines. Because I've been around long enough to know human nature, because it's safe to take the middle road. And I'd like for us to really think about, you've got to plot yourself on one line or the other. In other words, I'm either over here or I'm over here in here. Now you can be close to it, but just one thing I put in it, no, can't. You can't say, well, I'm kind of in the middle, I'm right here. I'm sometimes over here, sometimes in here. Let's go on to the next chapter. No, I want you to think about this. And we'll do that next week. So thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week. Yes, sir.
Mike, I'm wondering, do you know what that